get the meeting started? Cindy, so you want to wait for John here?
We have a quorum, so we can start. We have 4 people online, and it's a 5-member board, so it takes 3 to pass an approval.
So we got Jim, Zach, me, and Jim.
Yep.
All right. Well, why don't we start the meeting? If John jumps on, that's great too. He can
Perfect.
follow in with us.
Perfect.
So if you want to make roll call a minute quick.
Bauk.
Here.
Muir.
Present.
Zerfas.
Here.
Bont.
Here.
Kubashak.
He's not
Ludlow.
coming. So we have a quorum.
Okay. So the meeting will come to order here. Let's take a look at the agenda. If anybody have any changes or additions that we need to do at this time?
Oop.
I move that the agenda be approved. as
Second.
All right.
Sorry,
About
can you please tell me who the first and second were? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Jim Bauk made the motion.
first one,
Thank you.
Muir on the second.
Amir on a second.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
All set, Aaron?
Yes, do you have any discussion before I call roll?
No. Oh, that's right. We got to do that again. Yes, no, go ahead.
Sorry, Bauk,
Yes,
Muir,
Yes.
Zerfas,
Yes.
Bont,
Yes.
and that's it.
Thank
Motion
you for
carries.
reminding me of that. I know it's kind of different, but anyway. And then we're going to move on to approval of the minutes of November 12th. Anybody have any other changes or anything we need to do on the minutes of Thursday, November 12th?
Aaron, could you scroll up to those, please?
Let me know whenever you're ready to go to page 2.
I'm ready anytime.
All right.
The minutes look correct to me.
Yeah, and they do to me too. So somebody want to make a motion on that?
I'll move that we accept the minutes of November 12th as presented.
That's Jim, that's Mueller,
Yes.
Jim Bauk, I'll second.
about second.
Roll
Roll call.
Sorry, Muir,
Yes.
Bauk,
Yes,
Zerfas,
Yes.
Bont,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, well, so we'll move on to new business. And the new business is a zoning board of appeals application at 979 Singapore Drive.
This is a dimensional variance for a front yard setback. As you can see in the memo, I colored in the part of the new construction that will encroach into the front yard. It will encroach not more than 6 feet. And it is because of the curvature of the cul-de-sac and the drainage easement. Even after narrowing the house as small as they could, there still is a small encroachment into the front yard. It will not be more than 6 feet. Aaron, if you want to go to page, shoot.
What are you looking for?
The one with the yellow lines on it, page 11. You'll see that,
Let
I
me know
put
if you need to zoom in on that at all.
that looks good. Right above the arrow north and the northwards, there is a part of an easement that I neglected to mark on this survey. And that's a 20-foot drainage easement on the south line of that property. It's right above the north arrow, and it's 20 feet wide easement. And that's part of what's causing the need for a variance. And I'll let the applicant go in to explain that better. And if you go to page 12, that shows the same map that was in the memo.
Okay,
So it gives you a little bit more description of what's going on there. And I did email that to you today, so you could have it in a more clear format. The first time I sent the original diagram, but this is the revised, and it's the same drawing that's in your packet or in the memo. So because of the curve, you can see what the problem is for the encroachment. And then you can also see the easement, the drainage easement in the two locations, one not marked on the survey, but the big one is marked. The one that really impacts them is the one that I neglected to mark.
okay,
I had a 3.5 hour Zoom meeting with City Council this afternoon. And when I get the questions at the last minute, it's really hard to get the information out. So if you could get me the questions earlier than the same day, it will be much better.
okay. Cindy, one quick question I have for you, and it's that the 6-foot easement there, you can see is not the whole entire house. What portion of the house would that encompass? A very
If
small,
you go, yeah, it's really small part of the house. It's Aaron, if you go back to the memo, page, I don't know what page it is. The one with the red marks on it. It's page 4.
Are you wanting to look at the diagram or the text?
This one, just the diagram. You
okay,
can see that the portion marked in red is the small part that will encroach into the front yard.
right,
And it's because of the two easements, the one that's the whole entire backyard, and then the one that is on the right side of your screen showing here. It's a very oddly shaped lot. And Aaron, you can include that John has joined the meeting.
Thank you.
welcome, John. Okay, any other things, Cindy, that you want to mention on that at all?
No, I really don't. It's a 50-foot front yard setback, which is unusual in our residential setback requirements. And there is beyond the setback, there is quite a wide right of way between the paved part of the street and the front property line that looks like and is maintained by the property owner as part of their lawn.
Okay,
So
Okay.
if you have any questions for me, please let me know.
anybody have any questions for Cindy at this time? Otherwise, we'll move on to the,
Just a point of clarification, Cindy.
go ahead, Jim.
This setback appears to be quite a bit larger than most others. Is that because of city zoning requirements or a subdivision or association requirement? What drove that?
That is the city zoning ordinance that requires the 50-foot setback. And it gets difficult when you get into cul-de-sacs is when it gets difficult. And because of the topography and the drainage easements are really constraining the buildable part of the lot.
Are there other areas in the city with a 50-foot front yard setback?
All of the Maple Street zone district is 50 feet setback. but only about 4 lots in all are on a cul-de-sac. And most of them don't have this kind of topography, if not all of them.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We would like to then move on to the presentation of the applicant, if he is there, or she. If you could give us your name.
Sure. This is Phil Rothermick, my partner and I, Mike Hayes. Bought this lot about a year ago. We were drawn to the lot because of the wooded nature of it. The lot, as you can see, is a lot bigger than the buildable area. And our thought was that we could keep the whole backside in trees and be comfortable that it would stay that way. We were aware of the 50-foot setback, but I guess didn't ask enough questions and weren't aware that the 50 feet was measured from 20 feet back. So for those, if anybody hasn't seen the property, it's heavily wooded. The back part of the property where this drainage easement to the Gulf drain is actually a fairly large, deep drainage ditch. And there's a 20-foot easement across that for drainage from, I guess, everything up toward Maple Street drains down through there, past the back of our property, then into essentially the preserve behind us. Our goal was to, design something that we could fit among the trees, taking out as few trees as possible. And part of what's driving this application is that the two biggest trees really on the whole lot are two roughly 36-inch oak trees, one in the front, one in the back. And we spent almost a year trying to design something where we could fit within the trees, taking out as few as possible. We didn't want to move as you can see from the diagram of the lot, the back end of the lot that works down toward the preserve is a lot more space, but to mass everything on that side of the lot, first of all, would be a lot closer to the house to the west, and would require us, and I'm going to ask Steve Darple, our builder, to speak more to this, but I'll just introduce this, but would require us to take out more trees in the back and carve down into the hillside, because the lot drops off dramatically sort of right behind where we're proposing to build. And like the house next door, they essentially moved way back, and the back side of their house is a sort of steep drop off. And we were trying to preserve all those trees behind. And our fear was if we move any farther back, we'd either have to take that oak tree down or we kill it by trying to do construction. The backside, if you can see the diagram of the house, it's sort of a T shape. That back part of the T is a sunroom and a screen porch. And our thinking right now is we're going to try and put those on piers so that we don't have to dig a foundation next to that rear tree. And then there's that big tree in the front we're trying to stay to the rear of so we don't damage that tree. And we're basically would end up with a house sort of tucked in between this. There's sort of a natural clearing in the middle of the lot where there's a bunch of trees in the front and there's a whole bunch of trees in the back. We're trying to fit this house, and we designed the house to fit in between them. In the application, what Steve submitted, the drawing shows where the house to the east sits in comparison to what we're proposing. So we're well behind basically all the other houses on the street, but the setback, because of the cul-de-sac, pushes us much farther back. So combine that with all the trees we're going to keep in the front, I really think that this variance in the front will essentially go unnoticed, but would allow us to keep as many trees as possible on the lot, which keeps the wooded value in the front of the house which benefits the neighbors, but it also allows us to keep as many woods in the back of the house as possible. If you're not familiar with that area, there's a deep ravine behind where we bought, and the other side of the ravine goes up to Ridge, I think it's Ridge View. And there's houses on the other side of the ridge, and there's houses on Spear that you can see in the winter. You can see the high school from there in the winter. So maintaining all those trees in the back benefits those people as well. So we're trying to, sort of do as little harm to the woods as possible, actually. And Steve, you might be able to help folks from a builder perspective to understand what we're trying to do with respect to these trees, and I think you said you measured the distance between them. We basically designed a fairly narrow house. It's kind of long, but it's long because we tried to stay narrow to fit in this slot, and we tried to keep it at 1 story because we didn't want it to be sort of massive in the setting. So Steve, I don't know if there's anything you can add to help folks understand the challenge here.
Well, I think you pretty well covered it, Phil. We're kind of right between the large red oak in the front and the large red oak in the rear. And if you move the house back any closer, you'd probably lose the large red oak in the rear. And as well, the grade drops off quite quickly back there. So then we're just confronted with going down deeper to get our footings in on exposed ground. So it just gets more complicated. And then we also move closer to that drainage ditch that's right to the south line, which further constricts their ability to construct a deck or do anything in the backyard there. So it's just almost on the crest of that hill by pulling it forward a little bit. I mean, it's about the only, it's not really an entirely flat area there. To the west end of the house, it drops off and there'll be some of the foundation exposed, but it's just really not desirable to push it anymore to the southwest there.
Steve, question for you.
Yes.
You're not having a walkout out of the basement at all in this?
No, we're not having a walkout. There again, if you push it back and you had a walkout, then you got to just dig down deeper into the woods and disturb more of the woods than they really want to see happen.
Okay.
There are a couple of egress windows out the back of the house, and the way the grade sits right now to the construction, it's pretty much right where it needs to be to allow for those egress windows and still just maintain, that'd be about 7 foot of excavation on that back side. Egress windows are, 7 foot from the level. So it's actually only down about 4 feet on the slope back there.
Okay.
And you can see the wavy lines behind the house. Those are contour lines that show the drop off. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I think those are 2 foot contour lines.
Yeah, more or less. I'm not completely accurate on those. I drew those and didn't have them surveyed, but they're kind of a combination of what I viewed in the GIS service map. But yeah, it drops right off when where those contour lines are there. It's quite steep, and it runs down into the backspace. The beautiful woods, but as soon as you start going over the hill, it's just a lot more intrusive into the forest to excavate that area.
Yes. Steve, I paced that off the other day. I was over there, paced the 50 yards for the setback, and not knowing all your dimensions of your house, which didn't help me a little bit, which would have given me a little bit more information, because I saw the house and then the deck and that on the back and a sun porch. I did see that it's a very severe drop off on the back, and I saw that huge ditch where the water drives down there to go to the swamp or the Peterson Preserve or whatever you call it over there. So you feel that where it's sitting is, there's really no way that you could go back any further. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think that we could go back any further and satisfy the preservation of the trees that we're gonna run into.
Okay,
All
right.
And, you know, kind of maintain some cost restraints on the foundation construction. That's another factor.
okay,
And
We-
get into the easement. You have to be very careful not to get into the easements. The two
Right.
easements are,
right.
Right. And we have between those two big oak trees, it's about 57 feet, and the widest part of the house there is 37 foot 6 inches. So we just have about 10 feet as it stands from each one of those trees, front and back. So, you know, we're pretty close to them now. Yeah, I certainly, you know, going back any further is just going to be problematic.
Cindy, what is the easement distance they need? That, because I saw that huge ditch behind her and it's massive. What is the amount of footage you need for that easement?
you can go up to the easement line, but that doesn't mean that you're going to avoid the topography issues.
Right, right. No, I'm with you. Okay.
Cindy,
Yes,
John Ludlow. I should know the answer to this, but I don't, and I think you may have touched on it earlier. Where does the setback starts not from the edge of the road, correct?
correct. It starts from the property line, and there's about 20 to 25 feet between the edge of the road and the property line. So there's kind of a massive grassy area between the edge of the road and the property line, in addition to the 50-foot setback. Now, we've had some other properties in this zone district where they had challenges meeting the 50-foot setback from the property line, but they were able to overcome them because they didn't have these topography issues.
Yeah, it's really an interesting piece of property. You can sit on the side of the road on the road there and look and not really appreciate the topography behind the house and that sort of that irrigation easement or that drainage easement.
It's a
really a
huge drainage easement.
Yeah,
It's way more than 50% of the parcel.
yeah, it's you have no conception of it until you walk the piece of property.
Right.
One thing
And-
I just mentioned for those of you who have been out there, we put all those ribbons on the trees. So the yellow ribbons are all the trees we're trying to save. So if you sit in the street and see all the yellow ribbons in the front, I think one thing that makes this sort of less of a burden, if there's any burden to the neighborhood, is that all of those trees in the front will remain. So the house will really be, you know, sheltered from the street by a lot of really big trees. And so it isn't as if we're, you know, trying to put a house on the road that's going to be, you know, obtrusive to the neighborhood.
I have just one other comment, is that this property has been through several different ownerships, and it was always sold because the property owners couldn't figure out how to get a house in that small of a buildable area without getting into the topography.
Interesting.
Okay.
And I would add something for Phil. Thanks very much for trying to maintain some of the trees up there. I live on Maple Street, probably quarter of a mile south of where you guys are going to build. And there are two buildings going up on there that have completely clear cut a lot of Maple Street, which you know, because you go up and down there all the time.
Right.
And so thanks for doing that. As a resident of Maple Street who tried to save a few trees when we built our house as well, I commend you for doing that. So I would be in favor of granting this easement
Yeah, I
for
would
that
agree.
reason and no other reason.
And by the way, I second Jim on that. I turned the corner and it was driving down towards your street. And on the left there, it looked like a big bomb was set off. It just, everything is gone. And so I would second what Jim is saying on trying to preserve some of Mother Nature. And I love Mother Nature also, so.
This is John Ludlow. Steve, I have a quick question for you regarding the foundation. Do you have to put, I don't know what the land is there. Is that sand or is that clay?
I've been told by an excavator who has some experience in the neighborhood that at the end of the road there, there is some clay down there. It won't be a problem other than, potential water retention, but we intend to tile and stone it and drain it out into the to the drainage easement.
Got it. Okay.
It's clay and sand. You can find 3 different kinds of soil within
Yep.
your property. I can testify to that as well.
So I'm curious, do you do helical piers to support the foundation there, or do you just do a standard foundation?
No, it'll be a standard foundation. There won't be any problem supporting the foundation. And one reason is we're pulled up, if we get the variance, we're pulled up a little more onto level ground. That's what I was kind of referring to. If we were forced to build back on that slope, we would have to go down that much further to be below the impact of the slope on the foundation and get below the natural grade.
Sure.
So it just creates a little more intense excavation to get down below that natural grade if you have to build on it. But we'll be far enough forward of that on the worst part of the grade that we'll have to deal with, we'll only have to go down a little over 4 feet to be able to get footings in and still be at a required depth under the grade.
Okay. Any other questions for Phil and Steve? Cindy, are there any other participants or anybody else on Zoom that we need to know? Either
I see Mike and Kathleen. I'm not sure who that is. I see Mike Hayes and I see Gregory Muncy.
Mike Hayes is my partner. He's the co-applicant.
Okay, good. And I see
And-
another one named just Mike without any last name.
okay, Phil and Mike,
Okay.
yeah, those are the applicants. And Greg, are you on there, Greg? Hello, Greg?
He might be a holdover from the previous meeting.
Okay, well, in that case, if we don't have any other,
I can tell you the other Mike is Judy Hillman, who helped us design the house and tolerated us for a year and is largely credited with trying to fit this house on this weird lot. So shout out to
it's-
Judy.
It's a beautiful lot, and from the first day, we wanted to work with that lovely natural setting. And that's why the building itself is divided into 3 sections. So there would be some flexibility in accommodating where the trees were and to keep them the biggest and loveliest on the site. So we've really wanted to work with nature in this project, and I hope that we'll be able to do it.
all right, thank you, Judy. Any other participants out there? Questions, comments?
Quick question.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and I may have missed this, Scott. I came in a touch late and I apologize. Neighbors have made comments or no?
I have no communications from any neighbors.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So we have no supporting or opposing comments.
That's correct.
So And any general things, okay?
So you could
So-
close the public
So in that
hearing if
case,
you
I'd
want
like,
to.
yeah, I'd like to close this part of the meeting and we'll go into our deliberation of the, on section 154 on the 4 standards. If, who would like to take the first one, if they would, please?
This is Jim. I'll take the first one.
All right, thanks, Jim.
That strict compliance with area setbacks, frontage, height, bulk, or density would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. The first part, I think that strict compliance, they still could use the property for a permitted purpose. But what comes into play here is the conformity unnecessarily burdensome for all the reasons that we discussed. The topography and maintaining the natural beauty of the lot. So in this case, based on the second one, conformity unnecessarily burdensome, I think they meet that standard.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Jim Mirror, would you take the second one for me, please?
Sure. That a variance would do substantial justice to the owner as well as to other property owners in the district, or whether a lesser relaxation would give substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to the others. I think the variance would very much fit the flavor of the neighborhood and would not have any impact on other property owners, which is probably why we got no comments.
Right, right. Okay, very good.
And I think a lesser relief would not be possible in this case.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's,
Agreed.
I would agree.
yeah. Yeah, you couldn't do that because that back part where all that drainage is, I mean, walking that and seeing that, that's pretty substantial. So I don't think a lesser would be either.
Yeah, and the 6 feet is really, it's not even for the whole footprint of the house. It's for one little section of the house
Right.
too.
Right.
Correct.
Good.
John, would you take the third one for me, please?
Yeah, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not the general neighborhood conditions. Again, the thing that strikes me about this piece of property is how different it is when you walk the piece of property versus when you sit or stand at the road and look at the piece of property. I think between the drainage easements and the topography, and how the setback is defined and oriented, I think a variance makes tons of sense in this setting. Plus, I'm going to look at it from my point of view, my personal point of view, and the statements made by Phil regarding the trees. I mean, I really like that. I like that goal. I think this is important in developing pieces of property. This is a great piece of property to be developed. I walked out there this afternoon, and it was a beautiful afternoon. It's a great piece of property. It needs a home.
Yeah. I almost went out there and took my chair and sat on the corner and just looked over the preserve. But you're right, John. Zach, would you take the last one, please?
Sure, that the problem is not self-created or based on personal financial circumstances. Well, I don't see any evidence of this being self-created. Certainly seems to be created by the topography of the lot and the easement behind it and the grade of the lot. And it seems like they're doing everything in their power, to fit a house in there that's respectful to the land and the neighbors. So yeah, I think it clearly meets this number 4.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike and Steve, it looks, Phil, it looks like all of the 4 have, according to our members here of our board, have almost consented to these, but we do need to vote, I think, on that, Cindy.
Correct. We need a motion.
We need to make a
support,
motion. Go ahead,
discussion.
yes.
Well, I'll make the motion. I would move that we approve the application for a 6-foot variance at the front yard for a new home at 979 Singapore Drive as submitted and modified.
Do we have a second?
Second, John Ludlow.
Okay, a motion made by Jim Muir and seconded by John Ludlow. We need to have a roll call, Aaron.
Muir,
Yes,
Ludlow,
Yes.
Bauk,
Yes,
Zerfas,
Yes.
and Bont.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
welcome to the neighborhood, Phil.
yeah, welcome to the neighborhood. Thank you. And it's good to have a beautiful piece of lot like that. And it's interesting how you're doing your, like a T level or a different, and your neighbor did the same, as I noticed that too. So congratulations.
We're excited about it. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all taking the time.
So at this time, we will close our deliberation as we have finished on that. If you have any questions, get with Cindy. And you have, I don't know if you're going to start building on it right away, but good luck on everything you do.
Thanks very much. We'll
Yeah.
sign
Thank
off.
you.
Thank you, Dick. Would you like to move on to unfinished business, which there
Yes,
is
if we
none?
can. Any unfinished business at this time?
Yes.
Hey, Cindy, one thing, did you, and remember I asked you about that, it's not unfinished business, but that wall that they put in over by the chain ferry?
Yes, and you'll see more information on that from our city manager. That was part of the agreement of the land swap for Dune Ridge and the
Okay.
city, where they swapped some land, and part of the agreement was for them to allow them to have the screening between the incompatible land uses of commercial property and private property. I'm sure that there will be more action on that, but it won't be probably for me, it will be probably from our city manager.
Okay, real good. Well, it was just a question that came up, so if
Mhm.
anybody on our zoning board needs anything,
Well,
just so
on
you
that-
know.
screening is generally 6 feet or less, isn't it? Somewhere between 5 and 6 feet.
Yeah, but when there is a site plan review, there's regulatory flexibility, which sounds like some kind of stomach issue, but it's really just allows the city council or the planning commission to allow changes to the dimensional requirements in our zoning ordinance. And I'm sure you'll see
Okay.
more about it.
All right.
Okay.
Any other communication, any other public comments out there? Any other ZBA comments? Anybody? If not, then I will adjourn our meeting.
You have to have a motion, a second.
Oh, that's
and a
right.
roll call.
Yeah.
Jim Bob, I-
Zoom meetings are a pain in a way.
Jim Balk moves that we adjourn.
John Ludlow, second.
Aaron,
Sorry, Bauk,
Yes,
Ludlow,
Yes.
Muir,
Yes.
Zerfas,
Yes.
Bont.
yes.
Good evening.
Thank
Good
you very
evening,
much,
we are
everyone.
adjourned.
Enjoy. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. I will not be back until May 1st. I'll see you.
Okay, okay,
if we have a meeting next month, are you here?
Nope. I am gone.
okay, Dick, I hope you feel well,
Yeah.
and everybody else stay safe.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Bill,
Good night.
thank you. Good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.